Welcome to The Issue Is, where we discuss the policies that shape our lives. My name's Dakota.
My name is Jordan.
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Thaddeus.
Today, the issue is what's in the cabinet. So I've got a few notes here. I'm going to go ahead and lead off with all of the cabinet positions themselves. So that includes the vice president, the heads of 15 executive departments, the secretaries of agriculture, commerce, defense, education, energy, health and human services, homeland security, housing and urban development, interior, labor, state, transportation, treasury, and veterans affairs, as well as the attorney general who runs the the Department of Justice. So originally, right, the framers of the Constitution envisioned the cabinet as a sort of like advisory board for the president, and they couldn't exactly decide like
Who should appoint
what
it?
that meant. Yeah, like who would be this advisory board, right? So originally they couldn't figure out who should be on the cabinet, so they essentially punted the question. They tossed it back to the president and essentially gave him the power to pick who he thought would be needed, because I mean, these people didn't exactly have like power at the time. They were just advising the president on his roles.
All power they had was unofficial.
Right, exactly. They held, as I mentioned, an advisory position. They were a privy council. They weren't what they are today. And so this sort of evolved over the years as like George Washington named Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury, the first cabinet position. The president appoints these positions and the Senate has to approve them. So even at the time, they weren't just allowed to pick whoever they wanted, right? It still had to be a consensus. So Hamilton was chosen, nominated, and almost immediately approved by the Senate. Following that were the Secretaries of State, which was Thomas Jefferson, War, which was Henry Knox, and the Attorney General, which was Edmund Randolph. Interestingly, the Attorney General didn't have a department at the time, right? Because the Department of Justice wasn't formed until much later. So he was actually a part-time advisor to the president and kept his private law practice. He didn't really work for the government. I don't even know if he took a paycheck. I couldn't find anything about that. I would assume so.
Consultation fee, maybe.
Yeah.
So those were, I guess, the original 4 cabinet members. But in 1798, during something called the XYZ affair, which we can talk about that here in a little bit if we want to. Link will be in the description if we don't end up getting to it. Which was an undeclared war between the U.S. and France. So at that point in time, Washington created the Department of the Navy, which would later be folded in with the Department of War in multiple name changes over the years.
Currently the Department of Defense.
Yes, currently the Department of Defense, and we'll tackle that too when we start discussing what each of these actually does. So next up, after the Department of the Navy, was the Department of Interior and Agriculture. Departments of Interior and Agriculture. Those came in 1849 and 1889. Quite a ways apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then Commerce and Labor in 1903, before it was split later in 1913 as well. Then the next department to form wasn't for almost, I guess, 40 years since the Department of Labor was split off. That would be the Department of, or at the time, Health, Education, and Welfare, since it was joined as a single unit. After that, we had 4 departments between the 60s and 70s. That's Housing and Urban Development in 65, Transportation in 66, Energy in 77, and they finally split Education off from the Health Department in 79. After that, we had the Department of Veterans Affairs in 1989, and that was the last department until the aftermath of September 11th, 2001, when we formed the Department of Homeland Security. That is it for the history. if you guys want to discuss anything, we can. I've also got some interesting facts here if we want to start hearing some of those.
I want to talk a little bit about how it seems like the Department of Defense was a rebrand for
Yes.
public relations type thing.
It was absolutely a PR move as far as I could tell because, I mean, if we're being honest, Department of Defense sounds much nicer, but Department of War sounds badass. Yes, I am the Ministry of War or I'm the Minister of War for the United States, or I guess we call it secretaries here, but
I'm the Secretary
of War.
It still sounds
Secretary of
badass,
Defense
though.
still sounds cool.
Yeah.
I guess, well, and that wasn't even the first rebrand either. The Department of Defense actually went through two rebrands. The first one being in early 1900s. Let me try to find that. Hold on.
Department of Army.
No, it was the National Military Establishment. That's what it was. It went from the Department of War to the National Military Establishment, and then into the Department of Defense now. And that was the National Security Act of 1947 that changed it from Department of War to the National Military Establishment.
And then there's the post office, which got made independent of the cabinet.
Yeah, it's still a federal agency, but it's now, separate from it's sort of like the Federal Reserve, how it's not like the president can't just fire that guy. Or the FTC is another example. The president can't just fire Lena Khan. Which is, I mean, yeah, that makes sense that some positions in the federal government should be immune to politics.
I was about to ask why the post office department was released from the cabinet, but I think you made a point that there are some things that the government shouldn't be able to touch automatically, if that makes any sense.
Or rather, like a single person in the government is more, I think, the point. Because, like, I'm pretty sure Congress can still fire any of these people. Congress is the most powerful governing body in our country between the House and the Senate. Because there are so many people, it is the majority that we're supposed to be ruling by, right?
Mm.
So the president is not supposed to have the power to appoint everybody. The president appoints the heads of the departments so that they can run the departments in the way that they
aligns with their policies.
They should be run. But there are departments of the federal government that have to run regardless of politics. And yeah, the post office is one of those. Like, you wouldn't want any president to come in and just start gutting that.
Yeah.
Fire the head of the post office and replace them with somebody who doesn't.
I
mean, maybe somebody
for
who
that to
doesn't
happen
believe that,
every 4 years, that would cause
right,
a
it would
lot
be
of
chaos.
problems.
Our government just would not function if every position had to be opened up and replaced every 4 years.
Yeah.
At least every 8 years.
The reason behind the Postal Reorganization Act was because Congress had to approve most of the things that happened in the post office. And so it was made independent.
So that it could make decisions.
Yeah. And it was actually Richard Nixon that signed that.
Interesting. And it's crazy how much that is considered progressive today was actually signed by Nixon or Reagan. Like the EPA, that was Reagan's thing. Or it might have been Nixon's. Let me confirm that before
Can you explain to me what the EPA is, please?
The Environmental Protection Agency was formed in 1970. Who was president in 1970?
In 1970, it was President Richard Nixon signed the Postal Reorganization Act.
Okay, so Nixon, not Reagan, Nixon. But still, two of the most, pointed to as conservative presidents, right? And it's not like Reagan tried to repeal it either. Didn't try to repeal
either of
anything
it.
Nixon did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's interesting how much politics moves,
Mhm.
Things get shuffled around, combined, separated.
Right, yeah. And views change. Yeah. It's interesting. All right. Well, I think that's it for the DoD and the post office. So do we want to get some interesting facts out here?
Sure.
I would like that.
So I've got a list. I've got one each here, and then we can do some digging afterwards if we want to. But the Secretary of State is fourth in line for the presidential succession, making it the highest ranking cabinet position that is appointed, because the vice president isn't an appointed position.
Hmm.
Well, I guess that depends on how you consider appointed. The vice president isn't appointed by the president. They run alongside the candidate.
Yeah.
So I guess they're appointed by the people. So the Secretary of Treasury once issued its own currency called demand notes before the Federal Reserve existed. Demand notes are still valuable today, but not because anybody will redeem them, just because they are
Historically relevant.
historically, yeah, exactly. The Department of Defense is the second largest employer in the world. That fact changed very recently, though. It has 2.9 million employees to India's Ministry of Defense's 2.98, I believe, or something like that. They're within the 2.9 number, though, so they could still jockey for position, but I doubt it. India's population is still growing more than ours is.
Yes, considerably.
So, the Attorney General was created in 1789, but the Department of Justice didn't exist until 1870. 90 years, 89 years, right?
When they were just a civilian contractor, pretty much.
That's
more
what I
than-
was about to say. You got a job and a paycheck for almost nothing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, you had to talk to the president, but that's...
I guess it seems like, because I don't actually know. Let's see what the Attorney General's job was before the Department of Justice, because the DOJ is like the FBI and stuff like that, right? Like, what did the Attorney General do
Before the department.
in Washington's cabinet? Oh, he was just the chief legal advisor to the president and
So he
handles
literally
the
was
legal
the-
matters of the U.S. government. He was just
Okay.
they had a lawyer on retainer and called him
That's what I was about to say.
Like I said, he was just a
that's
civilian
funny.
contractor.
That explains why he retained his private practice, because it's like, yeah, you're just
I'm just
a
a
guy,
guy.
right?
Yeah. I tell him not to do stuff when I know he's about to break the law.
hey,
Or make a law to
don't
make
do
it
that.
hard. Yeah.
that's against the rules. Don't do that.
That's against the law you just made.
Yeah. Remember, you just passed this. You just passed this.
Come on,
I think-
man.
That might be the cabinet position that jumped in a lot of power as soon as the Department of Justice was made.
Yeah, I do think that's probably true. It probably did gain quite a bit of power after the formation of the Department of Justice. Because once you handed the DOJ to the Attorney General, they became a much more important position. Because that's the guy who chooses the head of the FBI and stuff like that, like really important positions. So the USDA's National Agriculture Library is one of the largest agricultural research libraries in the world, with over 3.5 million items, which is cool. I think we should be funding more research.
Yeah, especially in terms of less privatized agricultural.
Like food production. Yeah, things that could help, if nothing else, if global tensions keep rising, it could be nice to be able to produce. I mean, we can already feed ourselves as a country, but it'd be nice to know for sure.
I was about to say we can produce enough food for everyone, but to make it to where we're not destroying the land is...
That's true too. Yeah, better agricultural practices would be necessary to
Well,
sustain it.
I was just about to say, and depending on what you're growing too, you're gonna have to get something hardy.
Right.
Coming from a farmer's daughter.
That's right. No, I grew up on a farm too. You're absolutely right.
because there's so many diseases and stuff. I was talking to someone who didn't even know that there are diseases for those types. Like,
Yeah, I mean, the
plants can get
Groma
diseases.
banana was around until it wasn't because
Monoculture.
it was it was a monoculture. It did not have resistance to, I don't remember the rot that it got, but a pathogen is what essentially wiped that banana off the market. I mean, you can still find it. It still exists, but
but it's
but not
it's
in mass
not
production.
widely sold anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we've moved on to the Cavendish, and I mean, that might not be forever either. If we don't come up with a way of preventing that in the future permanently.
Preventing and protecting.
Yeah.
And to me, that's
Right.
what they should be
Realistically,
doing.
I think monocultures are part of our issue because when we mass grow the same crop in every field, I mean, yeah, of course you're going to have disease outbreaks.
and then of course there's the issue with privatization of agricultural seeds and stuff like that.
Right,
Mhm.
with companies like Monsanto copywriting or patenting, not copywriting, patenting
seeds.
organic like creatures. Yeah, that's crazy to me that they can patent a seed.
And then going after independent farmers for allegedly using their seeds.
Yes, right. It's nuts to me. I guess it wouldn't be nuts to me if they patented those though.
I can also understand patenting a seed, though, especially if it's resistant to so many things.
No,
Make so much
because
money off of that crap.
the problem, well, yeah, that's the problem though, is you're not doing
That's the
it
whole
anymore
reason.
for
No, yeah.
progressing humanity. You're only doing it because listen, if the patent expired in a reasonable time frame and people were able to take this research and expand on it, then yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, that'd be fine. Use patents to allow innovation, let somebody get in the market early with their invention.
I
can
say
see
like
that,
a 5 to 10 year
right?
patent for like seeds.
Yeah, exactly. A 10-year patent.
Yes.
Let's use that example. That gives you plenty of time to get all of the production up and running. You've already been selling crops, long been selling crops by this point. And so yeah, when your patent runs out, then let other people make it because you are the biggest producer now. And if people start making it and they innovate, oh boo-hoo, now you have to innovate again. That's the whole point of the free market. The free market
was
isn't
about to
free
say.
if we patent things.
And that was my thing. You can have a patent on something, innovate it in 10 years, and do the new one.
Right, and
people
patent
can
that
buy
new
your
thing, and then the old thing
Yes.
breaks. Right. I
And
100%
people can use your old thing to create a whole vast
their
different
own
of
new
new
things. Right, but that's the thing. They don't
Yeah.
want people to be able to catch up on that research. They want to be ahead and stay ahead. And so these companies have managed to position themselves, legally speaking.
And anytime a patent's about to run out, they add a novel.
Right. They add something to it, or
Mhm.
they lobby to get the laws changed. I mean, lobbying's a big issue in this country on both sides of the aisle. And big
I, for one,
agriculture
hate
is
waiting rooms.
absolutely lobbying.
Yes. Because you can't do anything without food.
Anyway, back to the
Yeah.
departments.
Yes. Back to
Yes.
well, we were still in a department, I guess, technically.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Actually, we were on
commerce.
Interior, weren't we?
We were on agriculture, the USDA.
Oh, okay.
Yep, now we're on commerce.
Okay. Well, so the Secretary of the Interior here, since Thaddeus mentioned it, the Department of the Interior oversees more than 20% of all the land in the U.S., including national parks, wildlife refuges, basically anything that's and Native American reservations fall under the Secretary of the Interior as well. So I don't know how much of that land would be considered sovereign tribal land and how much of it would be considered public land, but I do know that 20% of the land in the US is ran by this department, so that's pretty cool. We have Commerce now, the Secretary of Commerce. The Department of Commerce oversees the US Census, which, I mean, not very fun fact since we have to do it every so often, but
Yeah.
I never knew who actually managed that. The Secretary of Labor has a Hall of Honor that celebrates individuals who made significant contributions to the welfare of workers.
Huh.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
I would actually like to see that.
Yeah.
Who's the latest edition, I wonder?
Department of Labor's Hall of Honor. I'm looking at it right now.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing if I
tell me
can
what
see. View the
Thaddeus
Hall of
answered.
Honor inductees. 2024 Filipino labor leaders of the Delano Grape Strike Hall of Honor induction. That's interesting to know. The Department of Health and Human Services manages Medicare and Medicaid, which are the largest insurance. Ironically, the largest insurance providers in the U.S. are the public option. Um, so, HUD's predecessor, the Federal Housing Administration, helped popularize the 30-year fixed mortgage rate, making homeownership more accessible to Americans.
Way back when.
Yeah, way back when, right?
When we could actually afford
Imagine being
houses when
able
we
to
were
afford
20.
a house. So
Just get more money. That's it.
that's what I'm trying to do.
The high
When
schoolers
you
make
get
fun
more
of them.
money, let us know.
Yeah, I'll
When you
get
find that
right
hat.
on that.
We hit that mother load.
You know what they pay substitute
on The
teachers?
Sims.
Peanuts?
A lot.
You're funny.
This was closer. I can't afford peanuts though.
Oh, the shells? Can you afford the shells?
Listen,
You can
I
eat
can
the shells.
afford to pick up the
shells if I
shells.
find them on the beach, and I can only afford that if somebody drives me there.
I meant the shells the peanuts come in.
I think that's the point.
No, those are
He can
edible,
afford them
Thaddeus.
if he picks them up.
Oh, okay. Barely edible, but
So the Department of Transportation, it's funny that we were just talking about that. The Department of Transportation is one of the newer departments and was founded under Lyndon B. Johnson. The Department of Energy, this one was interesting to me because I thought this was the DoD's job, but the Department of Energy manages the U.S. nuclear weapons program.
I guess that makes sense if you keep like everything nuclear under a single
department.
Yeah.
It made sense once I learned it, but it was more one of those surprising facts like, oh my god, I didn't know that. So you gave the nukes to the Department of Energy?
I mean, honestly, I trust them.
Yeah, I trust them.
Don't flick on or off that light when they tell you to.
Yeah, that when they have the do not touch button in the glass, just actually don't. Maybe consider not pressing that button.
Listen, their logo sparks joy. It reminds me of like a fake high school logo.
It really does.
So this one is probably the saddest one on this list for me. But the Department of Education is the smallest cabinet department by staff, employing fewer than 4,000 people.
Is it sad?
live
That
like
also
this?
doesn't surprise me, though.
Oh, it doesn't. And I guess maybe because it's not counting, obviously, like schools. So that's not the population of educators or anything like that. But it is kind of... It kind of goes to show how we value things like education compared to other departments. I mean,
I think very few of these department positions actually have the frontliners counted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, people like the Department of Energy might, though.
Oh, yeah.
And
at least has a
Defense
decent.
definitely does.
At least it has a decent budget, though. It's not like that they don't put money into it.
Define decent, George.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, you're looking at the budget, but there are more Americans than there are people in the military, and the DoD's budget is far wider, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that should be 1-to-1. I'm just kind of giving an example. Because let's see, what's the education's budget is? This was in 2007, though. What's the budget today? In fiscal year 2025, the Department of Education was allocated $238 billion.
That is better than this.
Especially compared to, let's see, the military's budget is only like 900 billion, right? So that's a significant portion of our insane military budget, at least. I wonder, I guess what I want to know is how does that money actually get spent, though? Because I feel like it doesn't it doesn't make it to the ground. Like, I have a kid in school, and our schools are crap here in Oklahoma, to be honest. That's not the Department of Education's fault. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, where does that money actually end up? How does it get
I
distributed?
think the main
Yeah, how
issue might
does
be
it get
standardized
allocated
testing.
to the states?
Standardized testing might be a discussion for a later podcast, because that's
Yeah.
actually a very good point, Thaddeus. And I think it would be relevant policy-wise.
Yeah.
Next up, this one's a little bit personal to me as well. The Department of Veterans Affairs. They are responsible for the largest integrated healthcare system in the U.S., serving over 9 million veterans.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
The veterans or the department? Both?
I think, was it a sarcastic good for them or a serious good for them?
Yeah,
I'll leave
that's
that
what
up
we're
to
trying
you.
to debate.
Both. Both.
I think
Okay.
he forgot that you're a
I-
veteran there for a hot second
No,
and then
no,
realized.
I did not. I'm just letting him going.
I think it started out sarcastic and then turned sincere halfway through.
Yeah.
He's like, good for good for them.
He thought he was going to be sassy and then decided against it.
Okay. And then our fun fact for Department of Homeland Security is also not a quite so fun fact. The Department of Homeland Security is the youngest department because it was created in 2002 because of the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers. And it oversees agencies like FEMA, the TSA, and the Coast Guard. I didn't know the Coast Guard wasn't Department of Defense.
Yeah, I thought
I
Coast
did
Guard
know
was...
that they get control of the Coast Guard in times of war, though.
I knew, yeah,
Okay.
I knew that too, because I worked with Coast Guard people, so I actually had always assumed that they were under the Coast Guard, or under the DoD. But, I mean, let me be specific here, because when you look at the Department of Defense, you can see which branches of the military are in it, and you know that the Coast Guard isn't on that list. But in my head, the Coast Guard is part of the Navy. And I knew that wasn't true, because I've worked with Coast Guard people, and they'd get very upset when I talked about them as if they were in the Navy.
Very mad when you...
Yeah,
Vice
and
versa, too.
but
Oh,
I
yes,
assumed it
very
was like a
vice versa.
Marine Corps situation where technically you're not like you're not in the Navy, but you're part of the Department of the Navy, you know what I mean? Like, I thought they were just picking hairs, but no, they are actually not in the Department of the Navy. So my bad to all those coasties I worked with forever ago. Okay, I mean, that's it for my list of factoids here. Did anybody else see or hear anything while they were picking through this that they liked or didn't like? Or
Well, I wondered, does the Secretary of the Interior, are they considered like the in between the federal government and the native tribes?
oh, that is a good question. Because I've never actually thought about how the natives interact with the federal government. So let's look up, what does the Secretary of the Interior do?
Because you may or may not know this, but as sovereign entities, native tribes are not beholden to state laws. They do, however, have to follow most federal laws.
I did know they weren't beholden to state. I did not know the interaction with federal laws, though. I actually thought that they were sovereign from federal law as well, but clearly
I think it
mistaken.
varies. Like most of the federal laws they have to follow, but they have their...
Is it like a treaty situation where they don't actually have to follow federal law, but I mean, they would, because, like, eventually it's going to come to a head, right? But, like, on paper, they follow it because of a treaty, I would assume. I don't know that. I'm asking
It might
that.
be something. It might be something like that. I'm not an expert in this, despite being native myself. But
okay, what does the Secretary of the Interior do? According to usatoday.com, the Secretary is tasked with advancing the administration's policies on public lands, energy, and the environment, as well as the federal government's relationship with tribes. So they are the liaison to tribes.
I was about to also say that I went to DOI.gov, and it says the U.S. Department of the Interior protects and manages the nation's natural resources and cultural heritage, provides scientific and other information about those resources, and honors its trust responsibilities or special commitments to American Indians, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, and affiliated island communities.
So I didn't know this, but it's 2024, obviously, when we're recording this. But the current Secretary of the Interior is the first Native American to ever lead a cabinet agency.
Huh.
And that's honestly the perfect agency for the first Native
Yeah.
American to ever
Yes.
lead. Like I love that 100%. I back that. I know my opinion
my
doesn't
goodness.
matter on that, but
Yeah.
So
No,
here
I
is
approve
another
too. I
really,
approve your opinion.
here's another really cool fact. She actually made a tribal advisory committee
oh yeah,
Oh, I
for
remember that.
the Department of Interior. Quoting her from the DOI.gov, tribes need a seat at the decision-making table before policies are made that impact their communities. The creation of this new advisory committee is a timely and much-needed development that will ensure tribal leaders can engage at the highest levels of the department on the issues that matter most to their people. And then it even lists in regions who is the council or chairperson for your people.
that's excellent. I like
Oh,
that. I like
and
everything about that.
Dakota,
I
I
love every
read up
bit
on
about that.
this. Technically, Congress has no more power over Indian nations than it does over individual states.
Okay, so yeah, technically it's a treaty type situation. Okay. I mean,
Yeah. The idea that tribes have
de facto it might not be if it ever.
they're like additional states,
Right.
in a way.
Yeah. Well then, honestly, they should probably get electoral votes.
I agree with this.
Like
Can we make that happen?
They could be cast alongside the states' votes, I guess, but no, actually no, I don't think so. I think they should get congressional district votes and be cast by the tribes, actually.
I do like that idea.
I really like that idea. I kind of want to try to, if we can, dig in on the education. So where are
does
they
that
getting
money
their
go?
populace?
Or
Well, money, and where's the populace? You know that you said that they have X amount of
4,000
people
employees
that are under
yeah,
them.
hold on.
Yeah. Where are those employees? Because they're not the people teaching in the schools. So are these the people who are going into these classrooms? But it's not
It's
even
probably
people
the
who go in.
people like divvying things
People-
out to the superintendents. And
Yeah, my thing is like, what rank are you considered part of this 4,000 people? Are you the
Right.
superintendent? Are you
I don't think it's the
on the board of the
superintendent.
government?
They keep calling it ED in this shortening here, and I'm really trying hard not to keep saying ED.
Ed.
The last thing I want is everybody on the other side of this recording to know that I have ED in my computer right here.
Oof. Dakota, let's talk about your ED.
I'm actually not finding what we do. Okay, learn about our mission.
Okay, so these are also the people who do FAFSA, the Federal Student Aid.
Okay,
Well,
that
duh,
makes sense.
they're the federal
yeah, I
part.
mean, yeah, it makes sense. I wouldn't have thought about it, but yeah, that would make sense. So they probably
Yeah,
do.
it's
they
just
do
something I fill out
regulations
every year.
They probably do regulations and like determine the accrediting boards and stuff for colleges too.
Mhm.
So
'Cause
the
it's on their first page, that's all they're talking about is colleges.
So Congress established the Department of Education on May 4th, 1980 in the Department of Education Organization Act. Under this law, the Education Department's mission is to strengthen the federal government to assuring access to equal educational opportunity for every individual, supplement and complement the efforts of states. So this is where a lot of that money goes, to supplementing the efforts of states in federal school funding.
Okay.
They also, though, they provide funding for nonprofit educational research as well. community-based organizations, parents, and students. So I guess they probably do like I'd assume there's some federal funding allocated to things like childcare from the Department of Education. At least for like not for the people who are putting their kids in childcare, but for the facilities that do the childcare. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Head Start groups, stuff like that.
Well, it looks like they're also being the center of education. They're also have a whole bunch of like learning opportunities for people as well.
Yeah.
Because like I just clicked on one of the birth to grade 12 education, and it tells you like what steps you should be, what
That
you
makes
should be
sense.
looking for. Here's stuff to help you out.
Yeah. They work together with, I believe they work together with the Department of
Health.
Health and Human Services.
It would make
to,
sense that they were
license.
originally part of the same department too, now that
Mhm.
we're really thinking about this. I would assume they were split because education is just also such a large, health and education are two very large problems to tackle. Like, I
Yes.
understand why they would both need their own department.
And there is still overlap on them as well.
And that,
by a
yeah,
lot.
that's what I'm seeing in here too, is there's a lot of, this is basically the funding for the education support, and that's the funding for the health support. But they
Mhm.
both help kids and students as well as their other jobs. That's interesting.
Yeah, you have when they both come together, like especially at places like you said, Head Starts and daycares.
Right. Where there are health regulations that need to be followed and educational regulations that need to be followed.
I was just about to say, and then going into labor, there's even a place where you click, it says raise the bar, post-secondary and career pathways, and it talks about how you can go to high school and do trade schools, or what dual enrollment is and all that. So they might have a step in, like, where we grew up, there was a VOTEC and doing helping
and we
the
got
kids
we
go
got
from
that
one to the
supplemented,
other.
right. I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that, but yeah, somebody had to pay for that. Probably wasn't the school, and it definitely wasn't me.
No, and that was, I think, the most we ever had to pay for was, like, I was in the health field, so the most I had to pay for was scrubs, and then I got a percentage off to do my certifications. I still had to pay for one of them because I failed the first time, as you do. But I got a percentage off the second time still, because I was still a kid.
Yeah, that program's
CNA
really
license.
the programs for like the testing and stuff that some schools provide are great, because through VOTEC, if I had known what I wanted to do as an adult when I was in VOTEC, I wouldn't have done mechanics. I would have done the IT,
The
NSA, I
computer,
think is
yeah.
what they called it, Network Security and Administration. I would have done that because they also had like certifications and stuff. I mean, I could get ASE certified through them as well, but I was not good at
Mhm.
mechanics. I am decent at computers, so
More and more, those two are coming together.
I was looking at the percentage of CET concentrators participating in work-based learning. Oklahoma is at 100%. Something we're good at. Finally, getting kids in
Hey,
VOTEC.
yeah, that sounds good. And at least VOTEC does have like a through line to a career. I think honestly, I do think that education should afford the opportunity. Like I think that we should have more opportunities for people to go to college without taking on
Definitely.
massive debt. But I also think that there should be more viable alternatives to college, because not everyone's college built. Like, not everybody can, and I'm not even talking about intelligence, not everybody can do the
Yeah.
testing that it takes to get through college. I mean, I've met plenty of people who they could be an expert on a topic and fail a test.
And I think there are
And
too many extraneous subjects in college as
in
well.
college,
They
right?
force you.
Because, like, I took a philosophy class for my computer science degree. Like, I get that it's because the school is, they don't need it. They're getting their funding. They get their money, and they found a way to make people have to pay a bunch of money. But I also see the other argument there that philosophy class might have influenced my opinions in ways that I have no idea. You know what I mean? I could have picked up something there that otherwise, with less education, I would have never considered.
I think certifications and like career certifications are a good idea, but they need to be like broader.
Or there needs to be more programs for them. And like a great example of that is like the Microsoft certifications. You can get, or
Yeah.
Cisco certifications. You can get Cisco's networking certification, and it has nothing to do with Cisco's other certifications. And sometimes, I mean, these certs could cost north of $500 to take the test. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes you need 3 or 4 certs to get the job, you know what I mean? And that's cheaper
Yeah.
than going to college. But it also requires a lot more self-paced learning, and you still have to take a test.
Well, and I'm also of the opinion of there are so many people who are like dyslexic or just don't learn in a classroom that if you can put them on site and have them learn,
Yeah,
they
actually
shouldn't
put
have
them
to
in the
take the
job.
test.
Right. Apprenticeship programs.
Yes, they should not have to take a test at the end of the apprenticeship just to prove a piece of paper test just to prove that they can do it.
No, they should have to take a test, but it should be a practical exam. Yeah. They should have
Yes.
maybe like a week of practical exams where they do different because when
Aspects of this.
I went to Florida for that cell tower servicing, that technician job that I went and trained for, that's how they did it. They had a test, a capstone that we had to take. It was a multiple choice like paper test. But if you failed the capstone, you could retake it like 2 times. They were really lenient with it. But you had to pass the practical portion. If you failed the practical portion, you had to retake the class. Because, yeah, if you get up on that tower 200 feet in the air and you fail, you're not retaking the class.
I mean, 99% of the time,
But
maybe
I
you'd
think-
survive.
Yeah, and you have enough safety equipment. If you mess up on the tower, you're probably going to survive. But that's the problem, is if you mess up on the safety measures, if you mess up clipping where you're supposed to clip, or you mess up, or you're not, like, you're scared to be up there and you drop your tools or something. I mean, all of those are mess ups that could be expensive, could kill you, could, you know what I mean, all sorts of stuff. So I guess my point is here that I like testing is necessary to determine if knowledge is there. But testing knowledge, like book knowledge in a practical topic, is silly most of the time. I guess what I'm saying is I would rather the mechanic that failed the written test and passed the practical than the mechanic that passed the written test and failed the practical.
Yeah.
I'd like someone who can do both, but
I would rather, if I had to pick and choose.
Exactly. There are jobs where being book smart is not as important as doing the job properly. And I think that's what you were getting at, Maddie.
To talk about the Department of Homeland Security, is the TSA necessary?
I'm gonna look up the stats, but the TSA's like catch rate is almost non-existent. Like they really, the stats say that they really don't help much. And this is the other thing. The TSA inflates their numbers by counting things that were declared as fines. So, like, the TSA detected almost 7,000 firearms at security checkpoints in 2023. But a lot of those were declared because passengers forgot it in their purse, or, concealed
you have
carried, and
anything
they
to
were like,
declare?
oh, shoot. Like, or maybe don't say, oh,
Do
shoot,
you
in the
have
middle of an
anything to-
airport while you have a weapon. But
I accidentally brought a bullet into an airport in 2022.
that's a good example. That would have been, did you declare that?
I did.
Then you count as a TSA find. They got you.
Yes.
Yeah, so the TSA inflates their numbers by, like, adding anything that was declared to it, so it's hard to even know what they are doing. Like, maybe they did catch, a single firearm carried onto a plane is too many firearms. So, like, they're doing something. but also maybe you don't need a whole department for what airport security can do. Like a metal detector and an armed guard is probably plenty. You don't also need an entire department built around it. At least, I mean, of course, I'm a post 9/11 kid. I was born in 97, but I barely remember it. So it's not like I don't remember the time when this stuff was implemented and what the atmosphere surrounding that time might have actually been. I was a child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't fly either.
I don't even
The first
remember
time I
it.
flew, I was an adult. So
Yeah.
I mean, TSA's just been a part of my life every time I've flown. I wouldn't know what it was like without it, but I mean, you didn't hear about massive amounts of plane hijackings or anything going on before that, but I mean, if it happens once, people are going to do it again.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to cover?
I have one more fun fact here that I found while I was looking at the interior. It it was nicknamed in its first like few years. It was nicknamed the Department of Everything Else.
I love it.
You know, that kind of fits with like the 20% of United States land.
Yeah, right. And it's funny
It was just the leftovers.
because it was the fifth department to be formed, right? I mean, I guess fourth if you don't count the Department of Justice because it was just the AG. So it was the fourth technically department to be formed. And so yeah, they were just like, let's get a department for like the
Everything
continent. Yeah, let's get a department for everything here.
The land. Yeah, and we don't have one about the land. The farmland? We have not the farmland. All the other land.
Well, they didn't have agriculture yet. That wasn't for another like
Oh, okay.
15 years.
Oh,
Yeah, so it did include agriculture. Realistically, it was the Department of like, I mean, the Department of Public Land, really. And I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Department of everything else.
I guess I do have one big question about the Department of Defense.
Okay.
Why is there so many employees and why does it have such a big budget? Like for
Man,
me,
that's a question with a lot bigger, I guess, politics behind it. Because I guess the idea, our defense budget started growing before World War II and then kept growing. It just has never stopped because we've basically been either at war or in a Cold War since. And that kind of tension just every year, I mean, you ask the question of do we slash the budget? Do we keep it the same? Do we raise it? And the military is screaming at you to raise it.
If we do?
Right. The military is screaming at you to raise it, and then everyone is saying, well, I mean, it's the defense budget. Like, if we cut the defense budget, are we not going to defend ourselves? Like, that's the logical through line here.
Yeah.
And regardless of your politics on it, the Department of Defense spends a lot of money, and it's widely known that if we would just audit the thing, some of that money could be saved. Like, we don't even have to cut their budget. Auditing the Department of Defense would cut their budget.
Because like
just telling them that, hey, we're gonna go and check your receipt now, and they would go, oh crap.
There's just a closet in one of the military bases that has like a pallet of money.
I just imagine that one of the generals somewhere actually just takes his part of the budget and piles it up in a big room like the Joker and then lights it on fire. It's not about the money.
Because you can go on Reddit and listen to all the stories about how a veteran has snipped somebody one way or another, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this instead. This is good taxpayer money to do this bullcrap to you.
Yeah. Because like I'm not into politics most of the time, and I'm not a veteran or I'm not in the military, so I didn't know why we put so much time and effort into the Department of Defense.
Part of the reason is nuclear weapons.
Yeah, nuclear proliferation has done a a big job on every military budget the world over because, I mean, we're not spending that much on our, I mean, we are spending a lot on our nukes, but we're not spending the majority of the budget on our nukes. The majority of our budget realistically goes into logistics because think about how much money it takes to move a ship, like an aircraft carrier. Think about how much money it takes to move every aircraft carrier. We have more than any other country on the planet, and we're moving them all. I think we have something like 15. I'm going to look it up, and we keep a portion of those active at all times.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing we also have to put in the fact like the fuel, the mechanical costs, the all that
People,
kind of stuff
food.
within the budget, right? And the people,
Right.
yeah.
So the U.S. has
Okay.
11 aircraft carriers. There are 47 active aircraft carriers in the world, and we own 11 of them. That's why our budget is so high.
So about a
Because
10th, right?
that is almost 1/4.
Okay.
Yeah, 11 out of 47, so 10 out of 40 would be a quarter. So however that maths out. But I mean, yeah, we have a big budget, but we do use it. Like you can see where our budget is going. There's definitely
Yeah.
black boxes. Like a lot of that money disappears into Lockheed Martin's wallets because they can charge whatever the hell they want and the government's going to pay it. But
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. If we audited this and actually like looked at how much it costs and negotiated a real price with these government contractors, we might actually be able to knock that budget down without losing any of the actual effectiveness of the budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay,
That
I
makes
want
more
to
sense
circle back around to one of the things that you said is that we were talking about nukes.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons why it's so high. But we've already established that the nukes
are under
even
Department of Energy, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the existence of them that drive.
Yeah, right. And it just that
yeah.
I think was the point. That's what I took from it. Was that the existence of nukes drives up military budgets because you have to have the complex around. Like if Russia wants to drop a nuke on us, we have to be able to do more than just drop our own nuke. We have to be able to mobilize and move and get to where we need to be at any point.
But and that's I understand that. I don't think that is something that the common person would know either. Is that
I didn't know
technically
that
the nukes
before.
aren't even under
Right,
them. They're under the energy.
And that does kind of put it into like let's compare the budgets of the DOE and DOD.
Because that kind of makes me wonder
There's
how much
a difference
of
of magnitude, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
To me, they should have more because they need to keep those nukes in place and careful.
Oh yeah, overview. Department of Energy, fiscal year 2023, the budget was 48.2 billion. That is insane how much that gap is. They manage our nuclear program and they use less than a tenth of the budget.
So either they need more or the Defense Department needs a lot less.
Right, yeah, that's crazy
Or
actually.
both.
And I mean those carriers, the aircraft carriers that I mentioned earlier, those are expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
I mean, the technical skill required to maintain a ship like that is already expensive to invest in. And that's not counting the actual, like, the diesel
Equipment.
that those ships... Well, actually, never mind. Our ships aren't diesel. They're nuclear powered, but... So I guess the DoD does have some nukes. They're just built into the ship.
I actually have this link to Dakota, if you want to look at that on page looks like 11. This will break it down a little bit better for you. Comparative
This is the
appropriation
fiscal year
summary.
2024 one, too. Heck yeah.
Okay.
This is a
Yeah,
good one.
page
This
11.
is the most recent one, Maddie. His is better than mine.
Okay. That was the same. You
That's
said
a
the
job,
same thing,
Cory.
and then you said 2024, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna shut up now.
51.99 billion, so $52 billion. The budget went up since 2023. Still so much less than the DoD. Hold on.
Well, and it even tells you
fiscal year
by the
24.
percentage what they were wanting it for too.
Also, while we're on the topic of the Department of Energy, considering like America's electrical grid, I feel like it needs a
It
revamp.
needs more
The
money.
electrical-
Yeah. Well, we could talk about the Department of the Interior needing more money too, because wouldn't they be the ones that own the bridges and stuff?
Yeah, infrastructure
we
is always
could-
important.
Yeah, we
could
really
just
should
break
invest
each one of
more
these
in.
down.
Yeah, we really should invest more in the other departments too. I think
Yeah.
that there should be more than just the DoD in our budget.
And what's
Okay.
insane in this pie chart too that I see, cybersecurity, energy security, and emergency response is 1% of the budget.
Yeah.
0.55.
$55 million
Uh-huh.
is all
And they're
they
spending
allocate to
40%,
cybersecurity, energy
46%.
security, and emergency response. Wow.
Well, and the National Nuclear Security Administration is 46% of their entire budget.
Guys, they spend more money on headquarter administration than they spend on cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity.
Oh, sorry, on
They spend more on
cybersecurity, comma, energy security, comma, and emergency response
emergency
because they're all under the same budget. I don't know why, but it is.
They spend more on fossil energy and carbon management.
Oh my god. Yeah.
By a whole 1%.
Oh boy, we spend 7% on energy efficiency and renewable energy.
Time to cut that.
Yeah.
That's what's
Okay.
breaking the budget right there.
And then you have environmental management at 17%. Almost even with Office of Science.
I'm going to be honest, that's higher than I expected.
Higher than I expected. Yeah.
Well, they have to have a place to dump the waste. So that's where the environmental management comes from.
Maddie, you were supposed to keep that part inside.
Whoops! I apologize. I think they all need to create pie charts for us so we all can just
I agree.
bash it.
I do think every department needs a pie chart. I think if
And also pie.
every department needs to have pie in their pie chart budget. It can be a real slice of pie or a budget for pie. I actually don't care which, but
Who is the third place? I know.
oh, third in line.
President,
do we want to
Vice
go
President.
through?
Yes.
Here, I can go through.
Let's go through the succession.
Yeah.
Because you said it was funny that this guy's fourth in line, but
Oh,
I want to know who's
so
third in line.
First in line is obviously the vice president. Then it's the speaker of the House. Then the president pro tempore of the Senate, and then the
Secretary of State. Secretary of State is the fourth.
yes, Secretary of State. Then the Treasury. Then the Defense. It's funny that Secretary. Okay. All right, I'll tell you why this is funny to me. So the Secretary of Treasury is in line before the Secretary of Defense. But if you get to the fifth spot in line, wouldn't you kind of want the military guy to be up there?
Obviously, someone's sniping someone.
On the list, I don't think it's accidental anymore, unless they were all just chilling. Like, I can't imagine a situation where the vice president, the speaker of the House, the president pro tempore of the Senate, the secretary of state, and the secretaries of treasury, and like, I don't see a scenario where those all get killed and it isn't malice. Yeah, that would be rough.
Well,
Imagine honestly, if it got down to like the Secretary of Veterans Affairs at 16, it doesn't go past Homeland Security. So if you get through 17 presidents, we just don't know who comes up anymore. All right. Well, seems like that's everything we had to talk about today, and it looks like we're running out of time anyway. So this has been The Issue Is. My name is Dakota.
I was Thaddeus.
And Maddie.
And Jordan.
Thanks for listening.